Okay, welcome to the Kelly Healing Project, where we have real conversations about healing, growth, and stepping into your power. I am Kelly, and I'm so glad that you're here. So, today's episode is going to resonate deeply with anyone who feels like they've gone through a major breakthrough or life change, but still finds themselves pulled back into old patterns, old fears, or old versions of themselves. Today, I am joined by Natasha Ramlall, an embodied integration coach and founder of the Humanistic Coaching. Natasha works with women navigating major identity shifts, things like burnout, divorce, career pivots, and deep personal transformation, and helps them understand what's happening, not just mentally, but within the nervous system and body as well. Her work centers around nervous system regulation, somatic safety, self-trust, and what she calls grounded expansion, which is all about creating lasting transformation in a way that feels safe and sustainable. So, we're talking about healing, identity, nervous system responses, and why transformation is often much messier and more human than people expect. So, Natasha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. And what a great introduction. That was such a beautiful synopsis of my work. So thank you for that.
No problem. So, what first led you into this work around identity rupture and embodied integration?
So the identity rupture piece is one of those things, you know how life just sort of unfolds and you don't realize all the pieces until you
Mm,
look back and you can kind of put things together and trace how you ended up in the place that you ended up. And identity rupture, these moments of real disorientation and a feeling of being lost, has really been a central part of the work that I've done for over 25 years. I worked with adult newcomers and refugees who've moved, resettled in Canada. And so we were learning English and we were working on settlement. And so that identity rupture piece was a really, really big part of it, although I didn't have the language for it at that time. And then when I transitioned into coaching work and facilitation, I recognized that most of the women that were being attracted to working with me were very high functioning women who
mm,
had some sort of moment, transition, either by choice or something that was forced upon them, that left them really feeling disoriented and lost and questioning who they really were after this big
mm,
change. So identity rupture just became sort of the lens through which we understand the depth of that
mm,
experience. Because I think, we're very familiar with this term midlife crisis. And I think the difference when I use the word rupture very deliberately is just the magnitude of how um, how destabilizing that can be.
mm,
Um, because we're really when we're managing a transition or a change of any kind, we tend to think about the external circumstances that we need to manage. Like, who do I need to call? What forms do I need to fill out? What about, this piece and that piece? But we often forget that the bigger part is actually an internal transformation that's happening.
mm,
And that can be so painful. And it can be another reason that we kind of turn that inner critic voice on really loud and,
mm,
question why we're not getting over it faster or wondering what weaknesses in us led to that transition to happen or, just sort of feeling like we're failing if we don't push past it and get going onto the next thing. And so this idea of an identity rupture is a chance for us to really make space for what a
mm,
profound point in our lifeline this is, and also to see it not just something to get through, but as an opportunity and a chance to really do some self-introspection and, evolve from that better and more, expanded and with lessons that you can take into the next stage and phase of life.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I found that too with myself. It's almost like you can kind of, when you revert back to old patterns or old ways, it's almost like you could go into this whole like shame spiral where it's like you beat yourself up over, oh my gosh, I thought I was over this. I thought I healed it. But, healing it's not a straight line. It's almost like you go up and you do really good and then you go back and you slip back into those patterns.
Yeah,
And it's like
absolutely.
it's like you have to stop that inner critic or you have to kind of take control of that that inner critic that is just, comes down on you even when you revert back to your old ways.
That's right. Yeah. There's a really helpful metaphor that I got from Nicole Sachs, who is a very important
Mm,
in an important voice in the chronic pain um, area of healing. And she talks about how our healing is, it's like climbing a mountain, but we often think about climbing a mountain this way, sort of like
right.
up in one linear direction. And she says, but when we climb a mountain, it's actually more of spiraling concentric circles. And so we may find ourselves at a place where the view looks the same. And we say to ourselves, I thought I had already looked at this thing. But if we pause with awareness and we look down, we realize we are at a different vantage point of the same view. So we're a different person because we've had this additional journey and we're coming to look at this what feels like a similar aspect of our identity, but we're looking at it from a different viewpoint. And so, even though it looks like we're here before, we're actually not. It's always we come at it with a beginner's mind because in this moment, I'm somebody different. I'm somebody who has had all of these additional um, learnings and lessons and points of reference along my journey to get to this point. I'm actually a little bit higher on the mountain, even though the view may look the same.
That's so true. God, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, because I guess you think it's a climb. And
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you're actually going around. You're a lot further than you were, but it may not feel that way sometimes when you go back to old patterns.
Yeah,
That makes so much
exactly.
sense. So, um, so why do so many women really struggle during major life pivots when they really want a change, but when it happens, it's like they have such a hard time navigating just any kind of life change or pivot. What is your
Yeah.
opinion on that?
I think that it really comes down to when we're making a change, again, whether it's something that we've chosen for ourselves or something that was forced upon us, we're really thinking about what we're going to do moving forward. Like we want to get into action and we want to think about, okay, so what are the steps that I need to take to get from here to there? But one really important piece that we often don't think about is that before we can take those steps forward toward the next thing, we have to be willing to let go of something. We have to be willing to release something and we have to be willing to lose something because when we're changing our trajectory, when we're birthing a new evolved identity into place, we're letting go of um, old parts of ourselves and often we'll think of those things as their limiting beliefs, their old patterns that are no longer serving us. And that's true. But there's still a lot of comfort, a lot of safety, a lot of familiarity, a lot of attachment, a lot of love, a lot of things that in exchange for the new steps forward, we have to lose something. And so I think that's where we have that, push pull and we want to move forward, but we don't want to let go and we can't move forward until we let go. So there's that, disconnect in that messy place in the middle.
Yeah.
And while we're doing the work of learning how to release and let go of what's, no longer meant to, we're not meant to bring into our future,
Mm.
it can feel like we're losing the thing that we knew and we don't yet have the thing that we're moving toward. So there's no frame of reference, there's no
Yeah.
anchor. It feels really scary. There's no certainty. And I think that for all of those different reasons, it's such a challenging thing for women in general, humans in general, to have to navigate that. With high functioning women in particular, though, often they're used to having a lot of control, managing their lives, being really hyper capable, organized, efficient, getting things done. And even though the control part is mostly an illusion, it's not they don't actually have control. They feel like they're on top of their life. And so being in this messy place where you mean I have to let go of the only thing I knew and I don't have a map pointing me where to go next.
Mm.
They just, it feels so deeply uncomfortable. And so, yeah, for all of those reasons, I think that's what makes it such a challenging experience.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I've kind of been going through something like that, almost where I need to let go of an old identity and different ways that I maybe was people pleasing or just that different version of me. And even this weekend, it's almost like I was grieving that person because it's almost like I had to face the fact that, wow, I didn't realize that I still had this people pleasing kind of tendency. And so I don't know, I kind of had to grieve her and I had to grieve that part of me. And it made me sad. And then I don't know. I feel a lot better today, but it's almost like going through the motions of, almost putting that person to, okay, she served me at one point, but she no longer serves me anymore. So I have to let her go. And that's
Right.
the hard part because you don't see, I know I'm doing a lot of work on myself and just healing in general. And it's like, oh my gosh, that part kept me so safe. I
That's
liked
right.
her, but I can't take her with me. So I have
Yeah.
to let her go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's releasing control and it's that control thing. Um
Yeah.
and so okay, and also I guess part of it is maybe the nervous system. And so maybe could you go into more of how you regulate the nervous system, or how can somebody who has an unregulated nervous system start to really tap into that and start to regulate their nervous
Mm.
system?
Yeah, I'm glad that you named that because that's a really important piece as well. We're so used to understanding our experiences cognitively.
Mm.
So we kind of think about it and try to move through the experience from our head. But
Mm.
there's so much that's happening at the level of the body that's all wrapped up in our feeling of safety. And if we don't get that part involved in the process, we're really not going to be able to sustainably make changes. In high functioning women, oftentimes will be stuck in this functional sympathetic branch of the nervous system where we're, in fight energy, where
Mm.
we're, pushing and forcing and, um, you know, very quick to anger and very quick to, kind of attack in order to get things done. Other times we're in more of the fawning energy. You were talking about people pleasing,
Hmm.
and we get stuck in that place where we feel a little bit codependent on the relationships that we have to keep us safe, even when they're not functioning in a healthy way. And when we think about the nervous system in terms of polyvagal theory, I don't want to say a hierarchy, but you can kind of see different states of the nervous system as being a preferable state and a less preferable state. And so, you know, worse than a fight energy would be a functional freeze. And that's where we are just completely shut down. And a lot of women who will kind of push through in that hyper productive, forcing forward energy, because that's not sustainable, will eventually
Right.
burnout, right? And they'll find themselves in that place of deep exhaustion and again, disorientation and just feeling like I don't even recognize myself anymore. I used to be so
Right.
capable and now I can barely, get the laundry done. And that feels again, it's such an easy thing for us to turn on ourselves and start attacking ourselves and those feelings of self-loathing and shame and guilt and all of those different
Mm,
things. But when we recognize, firstly, that this is our nervous system's attempt at keeping us safe,
right.
it is going to have to be involved in the process of an identity rupture and in moving away from something old into something new. Um, and then learning how important it is to feel safe in any decision and choice that we make moving forward. And so you had mentioned about where can we start with that process of nervous system regulation. And in my practice, I use something called resourcing, which, if anyone's familiar with somatic experiencing, that's a really fundamental principle of that discipline as well. And resourcing is just a practice of sort of feeling into the felt experience of your body and
Mm,
learning how to locate a place of calm or stillness or what feels like safety or support and expanding that in order to regulate your nervous system and to
mm,
just come into a place of allowing yourself to be just as you are in that moment. It sounds a little bit maybe more complicated than it is, or maybe it sounds too simple to be effective.
mm,
I have a tool that I'd love to offer to your listeners. It is a guided audio. It's about 21 minutes. It doesn't require anything. It's just if you can listen and breathe. You can do this. And it sort of guides you into the experience of resourcing to give people a sense of what it feels like to reconnect with the body and to start to become aware of the different sensations and the different
mm,
feelings that we have in our body. And really, at the essence of resourcing is first step in getting out of the head where we tend
mm,
to ruminate and spiral. And if we're going through an identity crisis, we may be really, really stuck in all the stories and really feeling badly, maybe feeling anxious, maybe depressed because we just keep, replaying all the shoulds and the what ifs and the all the
mm,
blaming and all of the different things that keep us stuck. And so resourcing is really that first step in getting out of that story and that noise in the head and actually coming into a feeling of the body where we can find some calm in the storm. So it's a really great practice. It's definitely a fundamental step in anything
mm.
that I'm doing in embodiment work when I'm working with others and in my own personal life. So yeah, I'd love to offer that to your listeners as a first step.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect. And you spoke about freeze response. And
Yeah,
I'm so freeze response was my go-to. I would, it was like I was there, but I really wasn't there. Like I
right.
was functioning. I had, two small boys and, I was a successful accountant, like I would I did the work, but I wasn't fully present. And that's the thing. It's like you have to get back to your body. And so many people, it's like I think they maybe know something's off, but it's like they don't know what. And it's like it's just reconnecting to your body. It's not hard, but it's just a lot of people, they just need help getting there. And so that's great that you've offered that tool, the guided audio. So that definitely, yeah, can help others. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, getting out of your head the stories, because a lot of times a lot of this is it it's the trauma and it's the stories too that you tell yourself, of of basically kind of, and also the meaning that you gave it, because if you go through a lot of trauma, it's the meaning that you gave. Well, oh, I can't trust people. Oh my gosh, don't get too close. Don't, like that thing.
That's
But
right.
that's not true. That helped you stay safe at one point, but it doesn't serve you anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's great that it sounds like your work definitely empowers other people to take their life back and to get their
Hmm.
life back on track to where
Yeah.
it should be and where it should always be. And
Yeah.
that really is amazing. But also you talked about grounded expansion. I've heard grounded expansion. Can you explain just a little bit more about that? Is
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just say one more piece about the, sort of dropping into the body. I think that, I mean, you explained it so well, but the really, really important piece is that once we can start to reestablish that relationship and that connection with our body,
mm,
then we can get more aware of our emotional energy and what different emotions feel like in our body, which is such an important piece because number one, we can, learn how to grow our capacity to feel more without needing to run away from those feelings or bolster against those
mm,
feelings or distract ourselves from those
mm,
feelings. And even having awareness of our emotions is so important because really they filter every experience that we have. If you walk into, let's say, a work meeting, for example, and you're feeling an emotion, let's say you walk in and you're feeling angry about being cut off in traffic on your way to work, when you come into that work meeting, your anger is filtering your experience of that situation.
mm,
Likewise, if you had a wonderful morning and your child made you laugh right before you came to work, and you're walking into that meeting feeling, joyous and grateful and just lighthearted, that too will act as a
mm,
filter to the experience that you receive in that context. And if we're not aware of our different emotions and we're not aware of what we're feeling in any given day and how different experiences impact our emotions, then we're kind of blind to all of the different biases that we're bringing into all of our experiences. When we have that emotional intelligence and that awareness of what we're feeling and what that feels like in our own unique way, in our own unique body,
mm.
it's really, really great. Um, I don't want to say armor because that's a bit too heavy of a word, but it's a really good uh, it's just really good information to have. It's really supportive in helping us navigate our life um, with more awareness. And I think that's a really important piece. Um, and your question was about grounded expansion, right?
Yes.
So grounded expansion is really the process that I use in my coaching. And it's
Mm,
speaking to this idea of as humans, we are both living a human experience, right? Which is
right.
full of different emotions that are often very painful and often very
Mm,
hard to hold, and full of stories and all of the different things. And at the same time, this is not the whole of our experience. We are also energetic, spiritual beings.
mhm,
And so the idea of grounded expansion is to find a balance between grounding into our human experience and learning how to be with all of the different feelings. And at the same time, trusting in something greater than our human experience, which is holding us through that unfolding. And it's really, in the work, I've just come back to the same word again and again and again, no matter what way you look at it, no matter what comes through. For me, it's all about trust. And
mm,
I think trust is one of the hardest things for humans to really feel fully. It's one of the hardest things for us to do, but the grounded work is really about self-trust. The expansion work is really
mm,
about soul trust.
mm,
And then trust in the journey is that balance between the two. Like if I can learn how to trust myself, I can believe in my resilience. It doesn't mean that that I'm gonna be
Right.
okay all the time. Life is gonna
Mm.
life and it's gonna suck really hard
Right.
sometimes, but I can have self-trust that I can get through it and I'm
Mm.
stronger than I think. And that if I'm attentive and patient and I give
Mm.
myself time and space and allowance, even the most painful experiences can be an opportunity for me to grow and learn. And
Mm.
yeah, so the way that we approach our sessions is we will first kind of ground into the
Mm.
human aspect and really, just notice if there's any fear in any different kind of manifestation that we're holding in the body that's asking for our attention so that we can, process that or just allow it to be there, sometimes transmute it into
Right.
something else. And then from there, we kind of move into the more expansive piece
Mm.
where we're creating the preferred vision for our life. And that's where we can really lean into the trust that, we're here for something beautiful, we're here for something great,
Right.
and we can create a reality for ourselves that feels good and aligned
Mm.
and beautiful.
Right.
And so we ground and we expand. It's just this constant
Okay.
back and forth of being in that balanced state between the two. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah. Ground. Yeah. Um, so for somebody listening who feels exhausted trying to, quote, fix themselves, so what would you want them to hear? What would you like to tell them?
Yeah. Yeah, we live in a culture that really tells us if something's wrong, go out and fix it.
Mm.
If something with you doesn't look the way that it may look in the outside
Right.
world, the way it looks on Instagram, the way it looks in
Mm.
movies, the way it looks in, whatever stories we've been fed, then there must be something wrong with you. And if you follow the money, there's definitely a way that you can be fixed. Um, and really, what I think the bigger message is that nobody's broken, right? We're not
Right. Yeah.
broken. We don't need to be fixed. Today is just practice for tomorrow. And if we can learn how to be in our
Mm.
experience with acceptance, with self-compassion, and learning how to look at ourselves, the other people in our lives, and the circumstances of the world with less judgment,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
that's all we can ask of ourselves. And then we can just, rather than, um, being, rather than expecting our life should be a particular way, we can be in the feeling of what our life actually is. And
Mm.
most people, when they kind of reorient to that way of being, they really find a lot of gratitude and they
Mm.
find a lot of um, presence and peace and relief.
Mm.
And I think that for a lot of people, we kind of start to wake up to the fact that the way we are living collectively is pretty out of alignment with the way
Mm.
that we're biologically wired to be in this life. And so that's a really beautiful opportunity too to
Mm.
start changing because we are free beings. Um, we don't always have capacity to feel that freedom to the fullest extent. But at least when we have the awareness, we can slowly start to take the small doable steps toward, living a life that
Right.
does feel more aligned with our values and really leaning
Right.
into the things that matter to us, the things that count, not all of the stories and expectations and roles and
Mm.
restrictions that we've put on ourselves.
Mm. Yeah. So, how often do you see women confusing performance with self-worth? Is that very common? Because I know you work with a lot of high performers. Do
Oh,
they
yeah.
usually, yeah.
Oh, that's a big one. That's a huge one.
Okay.
And I mean, it was for me as well. That was a big part of my story.
Yeah,
And I think generally a lot of women in general feel that their worth is
it's
tied
tight.
to
Yeah.
what they're able to do. Whether that's, how they show up for other people,
Mm.
when they're needed, or how well or how perfectly they fulfill
Mm,
the roles that they
right.
that they inhabit, right? I want to be the best daughter. I want to be the best mother, the best partner, the best wife, the best
Right.
employee, sister, cousin, niece, aunt, whatever the label is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're so obsessed with how we're being perceived by other people and their judgments,
Mm-hmm.
that we're always externally referencing our life and our decisions and our choices. And over time, that just takes us further and further away from internal referencing where we actually know, right? We
Mm,
have a deep
right.
intuitive knowing that what's best for us, what feels most like us, what are we good at? What are we, meant to contribute in the world? We actually have all of that knowledge within us,
Mm,
but we can't hear it. We
mm,
can't connect to it if we're always in the noise of others and external and,
right.
all of those distractions and those different things that, are just really taking us away from that inner truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know one thing that's really helped me is just like I said, being in the quiet in the stillness, connecting with my own body and feeling, what energy is mine. Okay. Because sometimes you may feel off and you can't really pinpoint it, but it may not even be yours to begin with. And so once you kind of disconnect and stop the scrolling, stop the consuming, just take a break. Just, you don't have to do anything. You could just be quiet. And sometimes that's what we need, is the quiet, is the stillness. We're not meant to go, go, go all the time. It's too much for anybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. Yeah, and I grew up, I was born in the mid 70s, so I remember a time before we had phones in our pockets,
Yeah.
and I feel I feel it viscerally right now,
Mm,
that additional noise. And I know
yeah.
that a lot of women my age that I've spoken with, they're feeling the same nostalgia for a quieter, slower time.
Mhm.
And it's really anti-nervous system health or nervous
Yeah.
system regulation right now to just constantly be externally referencing by looking at,
Right.
social media or, constantly
Mm.
worrying about what the trends are, what's cringy. And I'm thinking with young people in particular. I have two sons that are 19 and 24. So I'm
Oh,
very aware of that sort of demographic and just, not that this is new, but we're thinking about our peers and we're thinking about, this isn't cool, that's cool. We have to, follow all these social rules. But now because it's so public with social media and it's just so ongoing, you never really get a
right.
break from it unless you deliberately understand the importance of quiet and stillness. So
Mm.
yeah, I think you're right. It's just making the choice to turn down the noise, sit quietly. Um, for some people, they may want to be, walking in nature or engaging
Mm.
in art,
Yeah.
creativity, music, sports, something just to get away from the noise out there and
Right.
get back into, the
The
human
body. Yeah.
experience that at the most raw level that you can.
Right, yes. For me, nature is a big one. Getting outside, grounding, and even when it feels like your life is falling apart, if you go
Mhm.
outside and you hear the birds and they're singing, well, if there was danger, they would not be singing. So the fact, it just reminds you that, hey, it may feel like it's the end of the world for me, but
Right.
things still go on and it's going to be okay and we're going to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, okay, so in your opinion or what you've experienced, what really happens when a woman finally stops abandoning herself? Does she take her power back? Is she able to regulate her nervous system? Like, what is your experience with that?
Mm. I really think it's very nuanced. It's so different from woman to woman because we have such different patterns. We have such different survival mechanisms that we
Hmm.
lean into. Like you mentioned
Oh, yeah.
before, that you'd be more of a people pleaser, and there are other women who are just, they're very ragey and kind of controlling, and
Oh,
it comes across as really aggressive, but it's really just their way of feeling safe in the
mm,
same way that the people pleaser behavior is just another way of feeling safe.
right.
So I think that, you know, the way that it looks may be very different from person to person to person, but I think the through line is actually understanding what safety is and why it's so important
Mm,
to our biology and also, all of those sort of primal
mm,
mechanisms that back from cave days when love and safety and belonging was our connection to survival, and being rejected, losing the love of our tribe meant life or death, and that we still
yeah.
carry that in our body. And so a lot of the time when we are maybe behaving in ways that we would like to change, we have behaviors that we're not happy with, if we understand the safety piece and how various things that we're doing are just a misinformed positive intention to be safe, then
Right.
we get our agency back. And that's very empowering
Mm,
because then we kind of, I think a lot of us, when we're not aware, we're just running on autopilot, right? Like it's that
right.
the subconscious or the unconscious has not been made conscious in the words of Carl Jung, which I'm kind of botching right now, but that's the idea. What we don't understand at a conscious level is driving our behavior, and we don't even realize it. And so I think that awareness piece is really important. I say awareness is like 80% of it, and then
Mm,
20% of it is the work. However, when we're talking about it from the point of effort, it's reversed. So it takes about 20% effort to gain the
mm.
awareness. And then it's like 80% effort to do the 20% of work, which is why we have so many incredibly self-aware people who are still not at the place where they have the capacity to sit in their dark feelings and be
Mm,
with, grief and sadness and anger and loneliness
right.
and
Yeah.
fear and shame and guilt. Um, and so that's really what this grounded expansion and the embodiment work is about,
Mm,
is let's come back to the emotional aspect of being human. Let's integrate
right.
it all so that we can be living our experience from a fuller, wholer place. Um, and the beautiful thing about that is that when we learn how to feel the emotions that we've been avoiding, we also have the opportunity to feel more deeply the emotions that feel really good, right? So if we're, kind of suppressing feeling emotions, we kind of suppress all of them. And when we learn how to feel more deeply and be more honest and embodied in our
Mm,
emotions, they all expand and get more
yeah.
vibrant and more vital. So that's, a good motivation because it's not always easy to sit in the darker, heavier
Right.
feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people too, they do avoid, if it's an uncomfortable emotion, they're like, oh no, I don't like this. So, they take on maybe certain habits or behaviors or different things to try to, this is very uncomfortable. But also, I mean, like that uncomfortable feeling is what can provide you your freedom, because the more power, the more you resist something, it's the more power that you give it. And it's like if you're constantly running away from something, it's just, it has a bunch of power over you. And, It's like
Yeah.
in actually accepting it and feeling it, even though it may feel uncomfortable, that's where you regain your life back. And that's where you can feel the good emotions because they are there. You just have to process these negative emotions first.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
And something that you had said earlier about how oftentimes what we're carrying is not even ours. I think it
yeah.
applies here too, because I mean, oftentimes the origin of not wanting to experience an emotion starts when we're really little and
Mm,
we are, we're expressing an emotion, maybe it's sadness or anger, and our caregivers, our parents, or the
yeah.
people that are meant to take care of us, they're the ones who are uncomfortable with our anger or our sadness because for whatever reason, right? I mean, generally, we don't like to see people angry. We don't like to see people sad, and especially our children, right? And
Mm,
so, regardless of the words that come out of our mouth, children are very perceptive and they pick up
yeah.
when, oh, this is not a welcome emotion. Like, it's not, if I express this emotion fully, I might lose the love of my caregiver. And again, back to that survival
Mm,
piece, that threatens my survival because they take care of me. So I need to do everything right by them. And then, when that kind of becomes the habit and the norm and it's never really spoken about, we are never going to assume that our caregiver is wrong. So we're going to turn it on ourselves and assume
mm,
that there's something wrong with us. So me feeling sad, that's that's something wrong with me. I'm not going to let myself feel sad anymore. And that's where we start to learn this dissociating from the emotions, pressing
mm,
it down, pushing it down. And then whenever anything triggers a sensation of sadness in the body, we will jump into story and we'll attach to something in the head so that we can escape the experience in the body
mm.
and just, and that's how we end up getting so stuck in our heads because we're kind of spiraling on that
Oh,
the story about the sadness so that we don't actually have to feel the sadness. And so the orientation is actually to come back into the feeling of the sadness and away from the story because the story it keeps us stuck. But the feeling is where we can actually move energy,
mm.
digest those old experiences, and we can feel less stuck and, have less wounding and less trigger from those different things.
That makes so much sense now that you said it and you explained it that way. Oh my God, that's why we get so in our head sometimes. Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
It's a quick
that,
escape.
oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when I'm working with women, it's really interesting the spectrum of
Mm,
how easy or difficult it is for women to be in the body. Like I
yes.
work with some women where they get it pretty quickly, within a few sessions, they're feeling into the body, they're identifying different sensations and pretty good at it. And I have other women where we, months into
Mm,
doing the work, they are still every second they can jumping into story because it's so habitual for them
okay.
to not actually feel the emotion in their body. So it really varies from person to person. It varies like we're such unique humans and so but I think that regardless of your relationship to your emotions and your relationship to how comfortable you are being in your body, I do think that this is a natural place that we all can be. And it's not that we're learning something new, it's just that we're remembering something that we unlearned because of
Mm,
these different things that may have happened along our journey. So it's just a process of remembering, in the same way that you understand when you need to use the washroom or when you need to eat some food or you need to go to sleep, right? It's signals from the body, it's data from the body that's telling you something, and our emotions are the same thing. We've just attached a story that those emotions are dangerous to feel. And once we actually do the work to learn how to feel those emotions and show ourselves it's not actually dangerous, especially if I can find a safe anchor within myself, which is what we do
mm,
with the resourcing practice, it's not necessarily dangerous anymore. It was dangerous at one point,
Right.
but
Mm,
it felt dangerous at one point, and now I'm holding the story that it's always dangerous, but it's not always dangerous. I
right.
actually have the capacity to feel this emotion. And that is a really powerful, powerful shift when women
Wow.
actually do land there. And as I said, for some women that happens very quickly, and for others it can take a really long time to find that
Mm,
safety. And so we really, we can only move at the pace of safety.
right. Yes. So, what is one message you hope women take away from your work?
Hmm. I think that the probably the most important message is that everything that we experience, regardless of how uncomfortable
Mm,
it is part of us. And
right.
so this, we have this inclination to resist and push away
Mm,
all the different parts of ourselves that we don't like. And I'm sure you've heard that very common expression, what we resist persists.
yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, really, the idea is learning how to understand that all of the parts that we like about ourselves, the parts that we don't like about ourselves, it's all part of our experience and it exists for a reason. And so, the practice is really about allowing and accepting
Mm,
and unconditionally loving ourselves with compassion
right.
and making space for all of that to be part of our experience.
Mm,
And it's a really empowering way to approach our lives. So, yeah, I guess that's the biggest message is that we have a lot more power and agency
mm,
to be in our lives than we may have believed and to create
mm.
new versions of our life as well.
So, where can listeners connect with you and access your nervous system resources as well as book a session with you?
The easiest way is just to jump on my website, which is humanistcoaching.ca. So that's probably where you can go to find all the different ways to work with me.
Okay, perfect. Once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing all about really the difference that you're making in coaching women and helping women, really overcome, identity rupture and nervous system dysregulation. So
Yeah, thank you. Thank
yeah.
you, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you again for listening to the Kelly Healing Project. Remember that healing is not about becoming somebody new. It's about reconnecting with who you truly are. Basically, healing the past and empowering your future. I'll see you next time. Thank you.